365 days that year. I traveled so fast.
I told you, she's the OG. She is the OG.
And I'd been on the road for a few years at that standpoint, but for whatever reason, this year went fast. On average, I was changing beds every 5 days.
Yeah, that's not really
the longest I stayed anywhere that entire year was 2.5 weeks. So I needed 6 months in a near comatose state to recover from that, right? So one of the beautiful things about this lifestyle is it is 100% up to you to set that pace of travel. And you can go fast for a while as long as you think you can maintain that fast, and you can go slow for a while.
Welcome to another episode of Everyday Badassery. I'm your host, Christine Lozada. This is a podcast meant to inspire you to be just 1% more badass today than you were yesterday. And I'm so freaking excited to bring back someone that has been on this podcast before, the Professional Hobo, Miss Nora Dunn. And she's one of the OGs. She's one of the OG travel bloggers, one of the OG digital nomads. She's been doing this for 17 years. And I'm excited to bring her in because so many people don't understand what a traveler lifestyle looks like. And there's so many amazing things about it. And there are also some really challenging, difficult, freaking ugly and burnout parts of it. And Nora has been someone that I have been watching for some time who's really pivoted and changed and done different things. And so we're going to bring you behind the curtains on some of the things that we've been working on, some of the challenges that we've had, some of the wins that we've had as well. So if you've ever been curious about a digital nomad lifestyle or being a creator or anything of that style, living and traveling full time, this one's for you.
Well, my name is Nora Dunn. It's actually not my real name, but we're not going to get into that today. I'm otherwise known as the Professional Hobo. And this was a name I started calling myself approximately 17 years ago because I just sold everything that I owned in Toronto, Canada, including a financial planning practice, so I could embrace my dream of traveling the world long-term and in a culturally immersive way. And I did not know what I was doing. There was no such thing as digital nomads or remote work or location independent or any of these things or ideas or definitions of what people now do today. I was just traveling the world, and eventually a remote career was going to come out of it. But one of the things that people would ask me when they met me was, what do you do? And I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of homeless, but I want to make homeless look good. So I'm a professional hobo. And people would laugh and it stuck. And 17 years later, here I am. I am the Professional Hobo.
Can I admit something to you right now that I don't think I've told you this before? Because you are one of the OGs, like OG digital nomad, OG travel blogger, I was actually intimidated to introduce myself to you. And you and I met through like a women's, I think Wonderful was our first time, a women's travel kind of community. And I remember we were on a call together at one point, and I was just, I had just started creating. This was back in 2020. And I was like, oh shit, like Nora's in the room. Like, oh my God, I want to talk to Nora, but I'm like, I'm scared. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you see some of these travelers and travel content creators, and then they become these, like, I don't know, non-human people in your mind almost. Like they're like above you and you can't talk to them. And fast forward, like I've met you IRL several times now, and most recently at Camp Indie. And you're just one of my faves. Like you're fucking doing the thing, and I love it. And so today we're actually, we're going to dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there are so many things to learn from the way in which you and I have built our lifestyles. And I'm curious to learn more about yours because you've pivoted a lot. But I'd actually love to start with where you been? Like where you been and where you going lately in like the last month or so? I'm curious.
So in the last month or so, I mean, you and I actually were hanging out just a couple of weeks ago at Camp Indie, where I was giving a keynote. Summer camp for adults. It's amazing for adults who like kind of unconventional ways of living and thinking and being. And it was just a fantastic weekend. And then from there, I flew back to Toronto, where I have a home base. I was there for one day before I packed everything up and I flew over to Europe. And I spent a couple of days in Romania. Then I took a train from Romania down to Bulgaria. And I have been camped out for the last week and a half here in Bansko, Bulgaria. It's a wee little mountain town in the mountains of Bulgaria. Normally a ski town in the winter, and in the summer it's kind of off season, but Bansko has this unique quality. There are more digital nomads per capita here than there are anywhere else in the world.
Wait, why?
Due in part to the fact, well, partly because the actual population of Bansko is quite small, so it doesn't take a lot to overwhelm them. But also because there is, just recently there was Bansko Nomad Fest, so it brought in 700 digital nomads from around the world. But even when the Nomad Fest isn't happening, there are multiple co-working spaces here, and there's really it's an amazing place because there's a great, amazing infrastructure, fast internet, everything that you need. But it's also in the mountains, so you have access to nature, and it's just a unique place for people to connect.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I love that.
It's been a thing. There was a couple of guys who wanted to open a co-working space here in 2017, and it all went from there.
Oh, that's rad. So actually you said something in there and it was really, so if you're interested in Camp Indie and if you've been listening to this podcast, you've been hearing a lot about it. You can find more info on that in the show notes. But at the last one, Nora gave this killer keynote speech. And she hit a lot of things about being a traveler and being a digital nomad, which is different than being on vacation. So for those who are listening who are like, I don't even really know what like a digital nomad is, how would you answer that?
It's interesting. The answer to that question used to be a lot more simple than it is now. But when the term digital nomad first came into existence, it was a fairly literal term. So it was for people who were nomadic, as in they had no home base and they traveled perpetually. And the digital part of that came from working remotely. So it was for people who were full-time travelers who worked remotely. And that was a very purist definition of that. But I did notice that just shortly before the pandemic, that definition started broadening as the remote work lifestyle became more and more popular and people started testing it out, but they weren't necessarily going all in and full time, but they liked the idea of calling themselves digital nomads. So it got bigger and bigger. And then the pandemic happened. And then, basically every company around the world either went remote or became obsolete. So on the other side of that, now we've got millions upon millions, maybe even billions, I don't know, of people who work remotely and they have remote careers. And of that, there's now all these people who want to try traveling long-term while doing it. So right now, I just recently read a study that 35 million people around the world call themselves digital nomads. But I'm also willing to put money on the bet that the majority of those people are not proverbially homeless in the strictest sense of the digital nomad term, but instead people are just trying out this travel lifestyle. They're traveling for short, medium, or long periods of time while working remotely, and while they're doing that, they're calling themselves digital nomads, which I'm all good with. So it's a much broader definition now. It's one that can cause some confusion though.
Yeah,
because it's a catchy term. And there's a lot of, like anything negative about, digital nomad catches the best and the worst of all analyses of anything to do with this kind of lifestyle.
I feel like that's the same thing about the word influencer.
Yeah, right? Exactly. I resist the people are like, so you're an influencer, right? I'm like, I think we all have influence on
it's true.
The people in our lives, the term influencer, I believe it means almost nothing because we all have influence.
Yeah, it's so true. So for those who are interested in jumping into being a digital nomad or traveling long term, so what you talked about is exactly the transition I made. So I had a home base at the time. It was New York City, and then I was living in San Francisco. I started working remotely for the corporation I was working for. It was actually, I'll just say, I worked for Steelcase. I used to do their brand marketing and strategy out of Michigan. And my only job was to be there 1 week a month, and otherwise I could be anywhere in the world. And so I did that for 7 years, and that really kicked off me starting to travel a lot and be in any place with good internet, like where you are in Bulgaria, as long as I could, get online and do my like online meetings and things like that, and then go to Michigan once a month. And that's what kind of dipped my toe into like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I wonder if I could make a lifestyle out of just traveling. And that was when I started dabbling in content creation. I'm curious for you, like, what would you, so my recommendation for people, if they want to like start, digital nomadism, or if they want to jump into a life of travel, is do what's comfortable for you first and start testing it. Even just a little bit, like even if it's like taking more trips every single weekend or something like that. And start figuring out what your other hustle will be at the same time, because it doesn't have to be content creation. It can be a lot of things. So if someone's looking to jump into it or travel long term, what would you recommend?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that there is a misnomer, or there was at least a misnomer for a while, that all digital nomads are content creators or
Yeah,
influencers.
it's not true.
That is just so not. But what we see, there's tons of people out there, even prior to the pandemic, they just mind their own business.
Yeah, they're just not on social media.
They're just traveling. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
they're not on social media, and they're not trying to sell anything. So it is the picture that we see is the picture of the people who are in the lifestyle and perhaps have something to sell or say about the lifestyle on social media. But the reality is, if you work remotely and you have a remote job, you have the ability to become a digital nomad.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And there's a lot of people out there who have remote careers. My top piece of advice, generally speaking, is what's twofold. One of which is take a test trip first. So just like you said, don't necessarily go all in. Why not just take that test trip, go away for a few months or 6 months or whatever it is. And, if you need to, you could sublet your place or do a home exchange or just leave it empty and just go away and see what that's like, see how that feels. Because I will say the lifestyle isn't for everybody. So wouldn't it be great to find that out before you sold everything?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? The other piece of advice I have is, generally speaking, it's good to have the foundations of whatever remote career in place before you go. That's not what I did. I found myself in the initial years of traveling, not only kind of figuring out what travel as a lifestyle looked like and carving out my own style and really hitting every bump up that learning curve that, at the time there were no tools or processes or, articles or anything to help me do this. So I was on my own. But then I was also trying to, in the process of developing my online career. And it was a perpetual balancing act that I was never very good at, because I was either perpetually sacrificing travel experiences for building my business, or sacrificing the quality of my work in business for the travel experiences. And, I think there's something to be said for hitting the road and iterating and seeing what comes to you. And I don't want to dissuade people from doing that. But I also think that if you do have a little something to help you, at least through the first little while, it could be savings, it could be a form of passive income, something to get you through that initial phase. It will really help grease the wheels of the lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because for me, when I I completely left my corporate job to become a travel creator, but I had given myself a runway. I had given myself a savings amount that I was going to put toward my travel and investing in my business, because I had an idea. I was like, I know I want to go on YouTube. Like, I know I want to make travel videos, like helpful ones. And I think I want to like go after drones, and I think I want to work with brands and tourism and destinations. And so like that was kind of like what I started with. And then I gave myself basically a 15-month runway in which if I didn't make a single dime or penny for 15 months, I'd be okay on my normal monthly budget. And that was my initial investment to see what could happen, because I wanted to go all in on trying it out. And not have to like let my mind be busy with other work on the side. Because one of my biggest learnings, and this is specifically for becoming a content creator, I couldn't realize my creativity until I completely stepped away from everything else in my life, namely the very wet blanket of the corporate world that teaches you to not be creative. I needed to completely step away from that to step into my creativity and really blossom into that. And so that's what it took for me. But I've also pivoted a lot. So let's talk about that, because shit has hit the fan a million times for me. And so one thing that I think is interesting is people always ask me, like, aren't you tired? Like, aren't you tired from traveling sometimes? And so my answer back, so I saw you at Camp Indy. I don't even know how long ago that was, like 2 or 3 weeks ago or something.
Time
Where
is on the road, isn't it?
yeah, time is relative. I was at Camp Indie with you, which was fantastic. Really great time to connect with people. That was my favorite thing about Camp Indie. And coming out of that, I spent some time in Connecticut playing pickleball, because one of my new pivots is around trying to become a professional pickleball player and creating content around that. So I stayed in Connecticut and played pickleball for a while. And then I came back to Florida for a couple days. And then I jumped onto a Virgin Voyages cruise, which is one of the places that I love to partner with and create content with. And what's awesome is I just came off of that cruise and I literally washed that same luggage, because I get back onto another cruise in a couple days. And so I go on another cruise. And then when I come back, I leave the next day to go to TBEX, the Travel Bloggers Exchange in Wisconsin, where I'm speaking on drones. And then I go on their Wisconsin press trip after that. If those listening don't know what a press trip is, basically the tourism board will take all the content creators out on like the sickest itinerary, like multi-day itinerary. So I was like not excited. Well, I was kind of excited. I was excited for cheese and cheese curds in Wisconsin, to be honest. But I looked at that itinerary and I was like, oh, wow. They actually put together like a really fun lineup of fun activities. And then I come back from Wisconsin. I have 3 days to edit that content. And then I go diving in Bonaire, because one of my groups that I've kind of aligned myself with my passions for drones and the ocean, is an ocean nonprofit. So I'll be out there with Team One Blue Ocean shooting underwater and overwater content, and probably partnering with a few of the tour companies and tourism boards while I'm out there. And then I literally come back for a day and a half. And when I say come back to see Meatball, my boyfriend, so he doesn't break up with me. And then I go on tour. So one of the things that I also pivoted toward was being cast by a talent agent to be a travel host and content creator for a brand. And I live on their totally tricked out bus, i.e. RV, luxury RV. And I will be on the road traveling and filming for them for 2 months, going cross country this time. So I will be all over the United States. I just got the schedule. And it's 2 months of that. And then that brings me to October. So like, that's what's coming up for me. Like I listened to myself saying that, right? And it's just like, holy, like that's a lot of stuff. Like, how do you not burn out? Like, what are you doing to live the lifestyle and also like make it all work? Because even now in the pivots that I've made, there's still a lot of holes. There's still a lot of things where like I am always on the brink of burning out and trying not, like one of my big things is conserving energy. And even when I was at Camp Indie, I don't know if you heard her say it, but Jen on a jet plane was like, "Yo, Christine, I saw you dip out early the other night. Like, it's not like you to like go to bed early." I'm like, I'm actually trying to like conserve my energy for all the things. So, okay, so that was a lot. I would love to hear from you. Like, what's one of the things that you've chosen to do now that's kind of different than the way you were traveling and monetizing in the past? That's like been a pivot that you've moved into that's working for you? Because I'm curious about that from to. That is a hard question to answer. Go.
Girl, first of all, this itinerary that you just described made me tired just listening to it.
I know, right?
So
I have some pivots I need to make.
Damn. And there's so much to unpack in there. So I'm not done with you. I'm going to turn this
you're
one
welcome
back
to
on
interview me back. You're welcome.
I'm going to turn this one back, but I will also give you some of my experiences to give everybody a little bit of context for what we're about to get into. So I'll go back to one year. 2010 was the year, and I traveled for 365 days that year. I traveled so fast.
I told you, she's the OG. She is the OG.
And I'd been on the road for a few years at that standpoint, but for whatever reason, this year went fast. On average, I was changing beds every 5 days.
Yeah, that's not really
the longest I stayed anywhere that entire year was 2.5 weeks. So I needed 6 months in a near comatose state to recover from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the beautiful things about this lifestyle is it is 100% up to you to set that pace of travel. And you can go fast for a while as long as you think you can maintain that fast, and you can go slow for a while. I really appreciated what you said about conserving your energy. I've been referring to it lately as managing my energy. And this is really a series of lessons that I've learned through some fairly epic episodes of burnout in the last few years, where I just realized that, there's my in my spirit, like I have spring break in my heart. I want to do all the things and be in all the places, but I also know that that's just not something I'm capable of. And as much as I love people and consider myself to be a people person, I am fundamentally an introvert, which means that
No way.
right? I know people are like, what, really?
Wow.
So recently, the definition of introvert and extrovert was explained to me in a way that I totally got it. Because I used to always call myself an extrovert until someone explained a definition that totally resonated for me. And that definition is, if you are an extrovert and you were with people, you get energized. If you're an extrovert and you're alone, you get drained. And the opposite is true. If you're an introvert and you're with people, you get drained. Your recharging time happens alone. So my recharging time happens alone. So if I don't get enough of that time, or if I try too hard to be all the things to all the people in all the places, I will, and I'm so kind of headstrong in so many ways too, that I will just put my head down and I will plow through all the obstacles in my way. And it's really not until my body completely shuts down that I'm forced to kind of look up and take stock of my life choices, at which point I often end up pivoting. So instead of forcing myself to those pivot points, I'm working on conserving my energy as well. And I do manage my energy. So I also dipped out a couple of nights at Camp Indie as well, or a couple of afternoons. I had a nap. Right?
We all need a nap. We all need that fucking nap.
And it was the same thing here at Bansko Nomad Fest. I mean, this is an event that is designed for FOMO. It's 9 or 10 days. I don't even remember how long it was. And it's like sunrise to sunrise, really. I mean, it's 24 hours a day of stuff happening. So you have to pick and choose what you want to be a part of and how and where and when. So that was the year. So 2010, fast year. In subsequent years, I've gone really slow. And I mean, sometimes I traveled so slowly that it was almost imperceptible. And that's okay too, right? Because we get to call the shots. Now, this year, I'm actually doing something completely new to me. And this is, Jesus, I've been traveling for 17 years and I'm still finding new ways to travel and experience the world. And this way is new to me in that it's kind of an experiment. At the beginning of this year, I thought, you know what? I've been creating a lot of resources on my website to help people travel long-term while working remotely. And some of those resources are for things like co-living spaces and co-living and co-working programs. And I have some friends and colleagues who've participated in some of these programs. And I never used to understand the value of them because I was always a do-it-yourselfer. I'm like, why would I spend all of this money on this co-living, co-working program when I could do it myself for way less money? But what I failed to understand is that there's value not only in having certain things done for you in terms of the travel planning process and having some of those decisions made of where you're going to stay and making sure it's going to be a good place with good internet and things, but then also having this built-in community of like-minded people who have remote careers and travel lifestyles to experience the world with. So at the beginning of this year, for a month, I was in Madeira for staying in a co-working space, which was co-living space, which was amazing. And I loved that experience. So I decided, I was like, I'm going to level up. So next month, or in a month, I'm going to spend a month in Estonia with a company called Hacker Paradise, which is a co-living, co-working program. So again, I will have 1 month to live, work, and explore with a like-minded group of people. And they take care of everything. We're staying in 4-star, interesting, refurbished sea containers inside a railway depot. I mean, that's so poetic beyond belief. And they have community coordinators and workshops and stuff to do. And they can hook me up with activities in the area. Again, all I have to do is really show up. And then a couple months after that, I'm going to level up to the tippy top level. And I'm doing a 4-month program through Africa with a company called Remote Year. Yes. So once again, one fee, all I have to do is show up and they do everything for the next 4 months. So I'll have co-living, co-working space. They'll do transportation in between all the different countries, 4 countries in Africa over
That's
four
so
months.
freaking cool. I will totally admit, with the first time you told me about this, I immediately went and looked up all of that info. And I am very seriously considering it. And one of the things I would also suggest is if you are somebody who's like, oh, maybe I want to try this out, it's actually a really great way to dip your toe in it because it's the community that's really important. Like, yes, figuring things out, you can do that on your own, but you can't find every hidden gem on your own. But if you could drop into a community in which that's set up for you and you have people who are doing similar things to you that you can spend time with, like there's a ton of value in that. Speaking of value, a ton of Nora's resources and blog posts about the things that she's been talking about, including these things, I will link in the show notes below. So if you're interested, make sure you check those out. You were going to say something, Nora. Go ahead.
Yeah, just the other day I was just explaining this remote year program that I was doing, and the person I was explaining to was a little confused. She's like, "Yeah, but Nora, you've been traveling for 17 years. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I always thought the remote year was for people who don't know what they're doing, and it was to give them the into the lifestyle." And I said, "Well, yes, certainly that's one way to look at it, but another way to look at it is, I personally, this goes back to our burnout ideas and managing and conserving energy. I personally do not have the energy or the bandwidth to create and execute a 4 month trip through Africa on my own. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't. I actually would not go at all if it were not for this program. And even if I did manage to go and do even some part of this, like if I picked 1 or 2 countries, the introvert in me would probably get to these places and just stay in my apartment because I'm on my own and it's too much
It's
energy
true.
and it's not the easiest place to travel through, especially if it's your first go on the continent of Africa. It's not my first go, but I know it's challenging, right? So instead, I know I can have this community of people who are intrepid travelers, some of whom will probably be new to the lifestyle and some of whom will be very experienced. So there'll be a broad range of all of us, but then we all get to have these adventures together. And Remote Year in particular hires 100% local community coordinators.
That's
So
cool.
at each destination is a local Moroccan, Kenyan, Tanzanian, South African who can hook us up with experiences that even tourists would not be able to have.
I think that's so neat because like I think about even like non-exotic travel. Like when I burned out hard last year, it was simply because I was changing locations.
Yeah.
I said last year was the year of saying yes. I was like, anything that is a good opportunity, I'm going to say yes to it. And this was when I went hard on social media so that I could get as many eyeballs on me as possible. And the number of like, I had no idea that was an opportunity to me type of DMs that I would get were out of this world. And I would say yes to all the cool ones. But that meant I was sleeping in a different place every 2 to 3 nights. And I did that for about 8 months straight. I did it from October to August. How long is that? That's, I don't know, a lot of months. It
Yeah,
was
it's
so
almost a
many.
year.
But even for that type of travel, if you have to figure out where you're getting your morning coffee from and you don't know every couple days because you're having to figure that out, it becomes overwhelming. Like you have nothing in your life that is like regular or routine. And that's just traveling through the United States. And so for something like what you're talking about, where it's like exotic travel, somewhere far and different and a language barrier and all the things, and having someone that can coordinate that for you who's a local, like that's amazing. I'm so on board with that.
And you know what? You touched upon it right there. One of the biggest misconceptions or one of the biggest misunderstandings or things that people don't think about when they're looking at getting into this lifestyle is that the daily tasks of life
Yeah.
take exponentially more time and energy. Like,
Laundry.
right? That's it, right? Just learning how to survive. It's different in every place. And for me, that's half the fun is learning how to buy my milk and do my laundry and get my coffee and do the things and get around. It's fantastic. I find it so empowering to arrive in a place where I don't know what I don't know. And I'm like a newborn baby because I can't even communicate and I don't know how to do anything. And then as the days and weeks go by, I figure out how to exist and live there. And I make friends and I, have my little, coffee place that I go to or whatever it is.
That's a
And it's
perfect
fantastic.
example of why I was burned out, right? Because that is the beauty of travel. It's like you should be excited about that so that you can learn all the things and experience the place. But I was just I was moving traveling way too fast that I couldn't enjoy that part of the journey anymore. Sorry, I totally cut you off right there. I was just like, oh my God, I'm
No,
ramped
it's
up.
all good. It's all good. But, all right. So now this takes us back to your upcoming travel because you just outlined another 6 months
Mm-hmm.
of wickedly fast travel and a whole bunch of projects and all these kinds of things that you're about to embark on. So how are you going to manage your time in a way that just help you learn from your previous experiences?
Well, that's assuming that I've learned something. Well, actually, I'll answer it. No, yeah. I was going to say I've chosen my projects more carefully. So what I say yes to now has to come with value, whether that means value in straight monetization, money and being paid for it, value in I know this is going to grow my audience, value in fill in the blank with whatever it is. And so now even if a trip sounds really cool, I won't take it if unless I like it truly want to in my heart. And so because I am choosing more carefully these days, that in itself helps to manage the time. Because I will say yes to the projects that are for the amount of time that will allow me to do the things I need to do, to finish all the filming, to take all the photos I need or whatever it is. And so I would start that answer with, I'm just really careful around what I say yes to. But one of the pivots that I made, so from traveling too fast and burning out on that, I wanted to find fewer opportunities because one of the things, especially as someone who creates a lot for social media, is there's so many one and dones. There's so many people like, oh, brands that want to work with you or other like tourism boards that want to work with you. And that's cool, but you want as many long-term relationships as possible. And so the tour that I'm doing on the bus was one where I was trying to pivot and work with the same company for a longer period of time. And not only because a lot of times for those who don't know this in the content creator world, it's relatively easy. And then when you become experienced, it's very easy to get free travel. It's difficult to get travel that is both paid for and you're paid. Relatively more difficult. And so I wanted one that not only worked on my passions, allowed me full creative control, allowed me to be in front of the camera and sometimes behind the camera. And I loved the edit and things like that. But it worked with all of those things. But it wasn't all the time. Because one of the other things for me is knowing myself, like if I was just on tour working for this brand all the time, then I may as well just go be a content creator for some corporation and have another new full-time job and then feel like I'm back in the cubicle yet again, like I was in my old corporate world. And so I had really pivoted in this one to try to find something that was allowing me to go on tour for months at a time, have breaks to go do other things, and then come back on tour. And it's almost like, even though my destination is changing, right? Because we're on the road going cross country, it's the same tasks. It's the same bus, right? It's a different place, but there's more routine for me. And so even though I'm moving a lot, the job is the same. And I have a routine on the bus that I can rely on to feel like a more normal human being. And I know where I'm getting my coffee and my laundry because that's on the bus also, which is fantastic. So like I would say that's one of the bigger pivots I've made in the last year or so. That's really given me some room to breathe.
So you've created the room to
Yeah.
You've created then the room to breathe in simplifying your work processes so you don't have to hustle as much for the sponsorships and whatnot. So you've chosen a brand that you have a long-term agreement with, and if this is a long-term gig, so you can go deeper with this brand and with the gig and not have to worry as much about hustling for new sponsorships all the time. So that certainly seems like I'd never even thought of that as a way to streamline how I live and work on the road to make it more manageable.
Because
what about the sheer pace of travel, though?
Pitching takes a long time. Like pitching places and managing that is a huge time suck. And I do it all the time, but I do it for the places I really want to work with.
Yeah.
Cause yeah, that's tough. What was the question?
Just in terms of the sheer mechanics of the travel. I mean, you're on the bus, so at least you're sleeping in one place. That's definitely a nice thing,
I
right?
get my own room.
Even though that place moves around.
Yeah.
But you're moving around a lot still. So how will you manage that pace of travel over the time that you're doing that?
So what's interesting, and I really wanted to like going back to and how I've honed in what I want to do has come from a million mistakes, right? Like in the past, I've been given a legit itinerary and I must be in these places at these times doing these activities. But and that's hard when, oh shoot, like it's raining today. I can't get this drone shot. I need more time, or like we need to pivot and do this or that. There's no time for that. Whether in content creation or travel in general. And so for this one, they've given me the room where it's like on this next 2-month tour, there are six stops. There are 6 stops I must be at for these events, these filming events on these days. What you do in between, here's an idea of what you could do. And here is the content that needs to be created. Go forth and figure it out as the smart traveler that you are, which allows me the room to figure out, okay, this is the best route that will allow me to hit these scenic spots, grab this content. If I need to rest, I can stay longer at this place. If I don't need to rest, we drive longer, but I'm booking the accommodations on their dime, etc. And it's giving me the room, both creatively and as a traveler, to flex for what I need, both physically as a person and to get the job done for the content. Because it might be like, oh, wow, like we got sunny days in Colorado. Like, let's go spend a few days there because our next stop's going to be in Utah, and let's try to get these shots. Okay, cool. And then let's move on. And that truly requires a traveler's mindset to do a job like that, because I have ideas of where I might go, but I don't know. I don't usually end up there. Sorry.
Totally.
So yeah, it's definitely a different and a unique one, but it's taken all my lessons of burning out to try to literally score a job like that. Yeah, I would love to hear like what's your next big thing, and why did you choose it? Actually, it might be your remote year.
Yeah, I mean, this year is the big thing. So it was a totally because I was creating all these resources on my website, but it was almost like an academic level that I was creating these resources because I knew people who had done them, but I hadn't experienced them. And I thought, you know what, out of both personal curiosity and professional curiosity, I thought it would be a good idea to do these things. So this next year of travel for me is completely not like the way I normally go, in that I have the next full year of travel planned. Like it's already all I have to do. I even did my flights because I use frequent flyer miles. So I was like, and I got a couple of aspirational business class flights that I had to book like way in advance. So literally for the next year, all I have to do is show up to an itinerary that has already been planned out. And it's equally liberating and terrifying. Like it's so weird for me because I'm used to kind of going with the flow. Where are you going to be next month? I don't know. I might stay here longer. I might go somewhere else. And now instead, this is all kind of mapped out for me. So in a way, it's nice because it's now taken that the mental energy required for where am I going next off the table.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting, but it's also kind of weird for me because I'm like, well, but what if, like, I don't know, what if there's like a really cool thing here that I want to do, but I got to go. So I've got to just kind of reconcile that in my mind. And it's also a faster pace of travel that I normally recommend anyone do if you're in this lifestyle, because I'm moving every single month for the next year.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people, when they get into this lifestyle, they say, okay, so I'll travel, 1 month per destination and per country, and that should be long enough. And it's okay for a while, but it really, again, if you take a look at the logistics of a pace of travel like that, the amount of time and energy required to plan the next place, figure out how to get there and learn how to survive.
Yeah.
It puts you on a hamster wheel of constantly either planning, moving, surviving, planning, moving, surviving. And you never really get to sink into the place where you're visiting properly. Yeah. So, because so much of it's done for me with things like Hacker Paradise and Remote Year, this is an opportunity for me now that I've outsourced that work of travel. Now I get to see how a month per destination feels.
Yeah.
For me personally, though, I can already feel it. Like I'm here in Bulgaria for a month. I'm a week and a half in, and already I'm like, oh my God, my month is almost over. Like it's like I can see the end already because when you get somewhere and you get to know people, and then there's things to do, and then you have a longer and longer list of things to do, and all this, suddenly the time goes by really quickly.
Yeah, it does.
So, and
which is interesting because for the average vacationer, not traveler, someone in the corporate world who takes maybe the entire, oh my God, 14 days of vacation that you get per year, they don't understand the whole like, oh my God, a month in a place. Like I could never spend more than a couple nights or a couple days. And it's a totally different lifestyle. Because you're not just on tours every single day. You're doing your normal life, your normal job. You just happen to be wherever you want to be in the world. I'm actually curious. So what is because you've been an OG digital nomad forever, and I'm sure you've seen a million people jump into that lifestyle. Whether your mistake or their mistakes, what are like the top mistakes that people make when they first jump into this lifestyle?
They associate the word travel with vacation.
Yeah.
Bingo, right there. And you just touched upon it, right? So it's the thing is, all we've ever known travel to be is a vacation. If you're on vacation, you're not working. You're doing touristy activities every day. If you're somewhere for 2 weeks, that's a really long time because you're not doing anything other than just experiencing your destination. But the amount of time when travel is a lifestyle and you are working full time, I always tell people, think about how many days a week you do something that could be considered a touristy activity while you're at home in your life, right?
Yes.
I mean, you might get out long enough to do something. You wouldn't necessarily do touristy activities in your hometown, but even just getting out and doing something that is not work for a period of time. I mean, you go out maybe a couple of times a week. The rest of the week, you're working. And then when you're not working, you're tending to the daily tasks of life, which continue on the road. You still need to do your laundry and your shopping and your cooking and your Netflix and chill time.
I forgot about
it's
Netflix.
Thing, right? You need it. And so when you are simply living your life on the road, now you inherently need that much longer to discover your destination, which is why a month is not that long.
Yeah.
Because again, if I'm only going out maybe 2 times a week to do something touristy, that's the equivalent of a 1-week vacation.
Yeah.
If I'm doing that 7-8 things in the course of a week or in the course of a month.
Yeah.
So the difference is you actually get to live at your destination when you have this lifestyle, right?
Exactly.
So you're getting a little bit deeper, and you are, your local coffee shop is now some new foreign coffee shop where you're meeting new people and you're, making small talk with the shop owner, and you're having these slightly more local experiences. So that's the icing on the cake. But really, travel is not a vacation all the time. I mean, if you're not working, it is, but if it's a lifestyle, it's a totally different kettle of fish.
That's true. And you have a really good resource for people who want to travel full time or hold on. You have a checklist about people who want to do long-term travel. Tell me more about it, and where can people find it?
I do. Anyone who is watching or listening to this can go to theprofessionalhobo.com/free gift. And for you, I have made a checklist of 10 things to do before you travel long term. And these are some of the logistics. These are some of the bumps in that learning curve that I referred to earlier, that I stumbled up because there was no infrastructure for people like me when I got started. My mission is to help people design their lifestyles and arrange their affairs so they can travel long term while working remotely, and to shortcut that learning curve. Why not hit the road with your bases covered? So you can do it stress-free, so you can actually start diving into all the experiences you want to have, and know that you're doing it the right way, that you have the right phone plan, and your bank cards, you know what to do, and you're saving the money, and you're not losing money on conversion fees, and you know how to get your mail where you need it. All of that stuff, You can figure it out on your own if you want, but honestly, I don't recommend it. Just get my checklist and you're good.
I know. Don't make our mistakes. All that will be linked in the show notes below.
Right? Don't be me. That's basically what my website should be. Don't be me.
All right. I'm ready to talk high highs and low lows. Actually, maybe we'll do a sandwich. So like, I would love to hear, like, in your wildest dreams, like, what was one of the coolest things that has happened? I mean, I know your list is super freaking long because you've been doing this for a long time. Like, what's one of the coolest things that has come out of the lifestyle that you've created of traveling full time?
All right. So I'll give you 3 little sound bites.
Ready.
Right, of cool things, right? Okay. So 1, I accidentally started an international NGO. That was kind of cool. 2, I had a kangaroo in Australia literally follow me everywhere I went for 6 months. It slept on my doorstep. And 3, I apprenticed with a shaman in Peru for 2 years working with plant medicine.
Like, in your wildest dreams, like who would have thought, like,
Yeah.
these are the types of things that happen in Nora's life, which is amazing. And a lot of these stories are on her website. So I will make sure I link that below. I would say one of the things that happened for me that I never would have thought would have happened in my wildest dreams is as a result of talking about drones and drone content, because I love, especially droning the ocean. I was invited to live on a yacht and help drone and find manta rays in the Maldives. Wow. With Manta Trust. And that was a phenomenal opportunity in which, I mean, my job was to wake up and go find manta rays with my drone. And then once we did, we would go scuba dive and take pictures and videos of them underwater. It was amazing. And so I never would have thought that would happen in my wildest dreams. But we don't talk about all just the good stuff on this podcast. So let's talk about your lowest lows. I have so many that I can choose from. Tell me about either a burnout time or a lowest low from living the lifestyle you have. Where were you? What was it? What'd you learn?
Well, I'll give you another 3. How's that?
Okay, ready.
I survived 3 natural disasters. I had 3 tropical diseases. And I got into I was riding my scooter in the Caribbean where I was living for a while, and I got hit head on full speed by an SUV.
Oh my God.
So those kind of sucked.
You came out on the other side of that, though.
But we'll chuck that one up to life experience.
Oh, wow. Okay. That was a gnarly one. All right. Actually, what did you ever want to give up on the lifestyle that you have?
Yeah, actually, it was probably about a year ago that I found myself in an episode of burnout. Mm-hmm. So there's that. I found myself, I was very sick. Normally burnout for me happens when my body shuts down and I'm really sick. I was very sick. And I recognized that the inner narrative and chatter as being the same kind of narrative as what I had in 2005 or 2006 when I made the decision to sell everything to travel the world. And, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in left turn territory again. Yeah. There were lots of times in the last 17 years where I've kind of slowed my pace and I've been kind of like, oh, I think this is home now. I'm going to live here forever. And then I kind of challenged my identity as a traveler or as a digital nomad. Well, maybe I'm not a professional hobo anymore because I've been here for 2 years or whatever. But inevitably I kept going for one reason or another. But last year it was a full on, no, I'm ready to throw the towel in on all of this and satisfy my fantasy of becoming a barista and living like I just want to go to work, do my thing and go home and not think about it. There was that was a lifestyle and career. And that was kind of like a full on episode of burnout. That was everything coming in on me at one time.
How'd you come out of that?
I recognized that I was in left turn territory and that becoming a barista was an option. But then I also decided, that I realized that the left turn wasn't the only path. So instead of doing the full pivot, I decided to take a step back out of myself and take a look at the situation that I had with a different light. And I realized that I had a whole bunch of opportunities with the business that I had just not been maximizing on. And I realized that I could basically try a few new dance moves. I could change up how I lived and did business and traveled without making a full pivot and doing the full left turn. So I did that. I basically just kind of almost took an experimental approach to my life and to my business. And in many cases, really what it boiled down to was business. And basically what it boiled down to was I got out of my own way and started treating my business like a business for the first time in like 17 years. Because when I started travel blogging, that wasn't a business. It was a
passion.
It was a passion, and I bootstrapped it. And even when travel blogging became an industry and a monetizable entity, and I was recognized as one of the OGs, I did not want to do all the businessy stuff that came with it. SEO and analytics and keywords and all this. I was like, no, I'm a creative. I want to be creative. I want to tell my story. And if I tell a good enough story, everyone will come, won't they?
Yeah.
No, actually. And so finally, I got out of my own way. I started treating it like a business, and I recognized or learned really that you can combine the art of creativity plus the science of business without compromising your license, yourself, your voice, any of the things. And in fact, life can get a lot easier if you just allow yourself to do that. So I allowed myself to re-envision how I could live, work, and travel around the world.
Yes. And so the opposite of that is what my burnout was. So one of my lowest lows. And what I love in your story is you had a vision for where you wanted to go and turn that passion into profit. And so for me, a lot of the pivots that I made were a result of the year that I said yes to everything. It was really around yes on could it be value and money, value and growing an audience, value, something valuable for me. But I kept saying yes to things that would potentially just make me money or good money. And were in line with my strengths, right? My strengths that I had at that time. I was really learning to get good at video and editing and things like that. But I was starting to say yes to things that would just make me money, whether it was working with brands and being behind the camera all the time and creating for them. And a lot of those things I was saying yes to, I was like, hold on, this aside from making me money isn't necessarily pushing me in the direction I want to go in, because I don't want to be a content creator in which the content doesn't have me in it or isn't, something I would show to my audience. And that's totally fine if your monetization strategy is to be a creative agency, making film and other things for other places, but that's not who I wanted to be. And so I found myself saying yes to too many things that simply made money and weren't the right thing. Another one, for example, is I was building a community and an audience around people who, and I will, to be honest, in full transparency, I will likely pick this up again later. But at that time, it was people who really wanted to learn how to create and how to do what I was doing. And I had so many people who were knocking on my door asking for free help all the time. And I realized that even when I started, doing some consulting on the side and making money off of that, a lot of these people didn't want to actually do anything with that advice, and it wasn't going anywhere. And not only did it not feel good to spend my time that way, but I also knew that it wasn't turning into something. And so I was saying yes to too many of the wrong things that for the wrong reasons at the time, which is why having that vision is really important, because there will be an endless number of opportunities to say yes to that will all suck your energy. And so for me, my lowest low, I was in Mississippi. I was doing was it Route 66? It was actually a really cool tour. It was like a press trip that I was on. And I was so behind on content. And I realized when we checked into this really cool, brand new hotel that used to be where the railroad workers worked. And they kept a lot of the old stuff there. It was very historical. It was really neat. I realized when I was there that if I didn't pull a few all-nighters in a row, I would never be able to catch up with the content I needed to create and deliver on in the time that it needed to be done, and in addition to the press trip that I was on. And so I didn't sleep. I did not sleep. I caught 2-hour cat naps for 3 days. And it was just, and I obviously got sick, right? And at that time, I had a goal of, like Nora, who's total badass OG. She's a conference speaker, and it was my goal that 2 years from then I wanted to be a conference speaker. That came sooner than anticipated, and I was flying red eye from one conference to the next conference that I was speaking at, and it was way too much. And that was when I was like, I need to really hone in on what my vision and my true North Star is. Say yes to those things only, less things, and they must be. And then you've heard a lot about it with how I've like pivoted toward the types of projects that I like to be on now. But that all of that took, right? Burning out from the shit that don't work to be able to pivot into it. Oh, all right. We just talked about some really ugly stuff. Let's bring it back. Give me one more good one. Let's end on a good note. You're like shaman, check. Kangaroo, check.
I feel so blessed that we have this ability to experience the world this way. I feel it's such an amazing lifestyle. And I think I feel so liberated just by lifestyle design in and of itself. And I amazed myself that 17 years in, I'm able to experience the world in a whole new way to me. Yeah. And it helped me realize that there are as many ways to live this life and lifestyle as there are people doing it. And that is kind of like a microcosm for what the world is in general. When we take a look at all that, how everybody has their own upbringing and cultural background, even in the same block, much less the same country, much less, the continent and beyond. And I just think it's such a gift to be able to travel through this world with this thrill of discovery and connection.
It's an adventure.
It's amazing
when you're a traveler. Hell yeah. I already know this answer because you've answered it before on this podcast, which make sure you check out Nora's other episode. Link in the show notes below. Nora, are you a badass? Why or why not?
Oh yeah, I'm a badass. Hello.
Well, what's your answer as to why today?
Okay. Well, I still riffing on this idea of the thrill of discovery. So, being willing to have these new experiences. It started with being willing to have a new experience in 2006. I was selling everything I owned to travel full time because I knew that the things that I wanted to do around the world, I did not want to sit on this dream for 30 more years waiting for a conventional retirement age when I might be unwilling or unable to do those things. So I jumped on it, right? So that's pretty badass. But then, just trying all these new things. So the newest thing that I started trying was Latin dancing. It was about a year ago. I found myself in the company of a bunch of salseros, and they do salsa and bachata. And I was like, these people, this is really cool. And they're digital nomads, and they travel the world, and they do this around the world. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I used to have a dance background. So I can pick up these things pretty quickly. But I compared to these people, I had 2 left feet. This is exactly 1 year ago in the exact place that I'm sitting right now that this happened to me. So I left Bulgaria, where I was at that time, and I went back to Toronto, where I had a home base and had planned to spend the summer. And I signed up for a dance school, and I went all in. I was at this dance school 3-4 times a week, taking salsa and bachata lessons. I was going to all the socials. I was doing the things, and I leveled up real fast because I really threw myself into it. I committed to it. I decided I wanted to do this, and I loved it. So, and the more I loved it, the more I did it, and I kept going and kept going. And knowing that 1 year later, I would come back here and I would see those people again. And at this time, I had my little Latin dancing heels. I travel full-time with carry-on luggage only. And I still managed to find room, totally impractically, for my Latin dancing heels, which are impractical for anything other than a dance floor. You can't even wear them out, right? So I always have room for my heels. And I was so excited to show up and see all the same people I saw the year before. And I'm like, look at me, I got my shoes now. And I got on the dance floor. It was just a few days ago. I got on the dance floor and had a couple of dances. And they were like, Nora, you've really leveled up. I'm like, I know, because I made it my thing. I made it my thing, and I made it a whole new way of experiencing the world. So now wherever I go in the world, this informs some of my choices of where I go. And everywhere I go, I find a Latin dancing social, and I go salsa dancing and bachata dancing, and I meet people that way. And that's my way of connecting with the world.
Yes, that is me in pickleball with my pickleball
Right?
paddle.
Right?
Yes. It's such a great way to connect with new people in other places. I feel like this is a whole other podcast episode. So stay tuned for this one because there might be some lessons learned from having something that you do like that consistently everywhere you travel, which does inform some of the places that you travel to. Hell yeah. Nora, where can people find you?
Well, my online home is generally speaking theprofessionalhobo.com. But my latest focus has really been YouTube. I've been going all in on YouTube lately, and my channel is Nora Dunn. And I have a couple of different shows on that channel, one of which is called Travel Smart in Style, full of travel tips to help you, well, as it says, travel smart in style. And I also do various gear reviews of travel gear and remote work tools that will help make your life on the road easier. So you can check that out as well.
Hell yeah. And don't forget about that free checklist. All of that stuff will be available to you in the show notes below. Thank you for doing this with me, Nora.
With great pleasure, Christine. I always enjoy our chats. You are the total badass extraordinaire. You inspire me very much so. And I love our time together.
Nora is full of so many amazing resources. Make sure you check them out. All of that will be linked in the show notes below. Please connect with her. She's such an amazing person and such an experienced traveler. And connect with me. I'm at Christine Lozada everywhere. If you got some value out of this, please leave a positive review. It really does help to distribute this to more people. It would mean a ton to me. In the meantime, go forth, be badass. We'll see ya in the next adventure. Ciao.